Okay, guys, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining us on this webinar tonight. As I just mentioned, my name is Rick Gazarian. I'll be the moderator for this event. I am the chapter leader here in Bangkok, as well as the Asia coordinator for Travel Massive. So this is the second in a series of panels I'll be hosting that will be focusing on Southeast Asia. And for those who are interested or curious, I'll be hosting an all India panel next week for anyone who's interested in the tourism industry and COVID and how that's been affecting South Asia. So I said this last time and it's true. I am very excited about the panel that we have tonight. We have 4 great people from the travel community. We have Stuart McDonald in Bali. He's been in Southeast Asia producing great content for many years at Travel Fish. We have Bart Bellers here in Bangkok. He is in the VC community, so he's going to bring a different perspective in terms of what's happening in the startup industry. Paul is a longtime representative of PATA, a well-known and important trade association within the region. And Natalia from Hoi An, who's a fellow chapter leader from Hoi An in Vietnam, and also the founder of Secret Eats. So one more time, please keep your profiles on mute. Please keep the videos off. Questions, thoughts, comments, you have the chat room, and we'll also be taking questions at the end. Please also be aware that this will be recorded and be here and utilized for future viewings. And let's jump right in. I want to hear from our panel. Paul, how are you? And please take a moment to introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. As Rick said, my name is Paul Prankan. I am the Director of Communications and External Affairs at the Pacific Asia Travel Association, better known as PATA. For those of you who don't know, PATA is a nonprofit membership association that acts as a catalyst for the responsible development of travel and tourism to, from, and within the Asia Pacific region. And I'm very happy to be here with Travel Massive. I've been a part of this community for a while now, and I've spoken at a couple of events previously. This is our first Travel Massive virtual event, so thank you very much for having me. Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Paul. And Bart, why don't you please take a moment, introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. I'm Bart Bellers. I'm the CEO of Expedite Capital Partners. Like Rick said, we are in the investment space. We are a travel tech focused investment company, not a venture capital fund. And we are also a venture studio. So besides purely investing money, we also provide resources to help startups scale faster and get from seed to Series A, as well as bring startups from US, Europe into Asia.
Excellent. Thank you, Bart. Stuart, can we hear from you?
My name is Stuart McDonald. I'm the co-founder of travelfish.org. We've been writing about Southeast Asia since 2004. And I'm Indonesia-based, but I've been running around the region since 1993.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. And Natalia, please chime in and introduce yourself.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Natalia. I'm a co-founder of Secret Eats Experiences. The brand was initially founded in South Africa as a pop-up dining movement. But a year and a half ago, I partnered with the founder and we started, I opened it here in Vietnam, and I started running Secret Cocktail and Dining Experiences.
Excellent. And Natalia, I'm going to follow up with you. If you can give us, since we have 3 representatives from 3 different areas in Southeast Asia, if you can give us a brief overview, what is going on in Vietnam? What's open, what's shut down, what is life like in Vietnam these days?
Actually, we have very good news today from Vietnam. The quarantine has officially finished today. And non-essential businesses from today are allowed to be open. We were on official quarantine for last 3 weeks. Totally in Vietnam, there are 268 cases and only 44 of them are currently active. No one has died here of COVID. And there have been no new cases for the last 7 days. Well, while I'm saying that the quarantine has been lifted, it's still not everything is allowed to be done. No big groups are allowed in the public spaces, no big public events are allowed. Everyone has to wear masks, and people can be fined if they don't wear one outside. Also, well, speaking about, for example, flights, there are still no international flights. And domestic travel. Overall, it's good to know that Vietnam is actually doing quite well, and everyone is excited that we are finally out of quarantine.
Well, that's some fantastic news, and that's great to hear. So, Stuart, if you can give us a bit of an overview of what's happening in Bali and how they've been affected by COVID. Yeah, Stuart, you're on mute.
Sorry. I'm new to Zoom. Okay.
We all are.
Yeah. Yeah, right. The situation in Indonesia is fairly complicated. At the moment, as of today, there's about 7,800 confirmed cases, about just shy of 1,000 people dead, I think, which gives the country a very high death rate by confirmed cases. Tourism has been hammered. In Bali, they stopped flights some time ago. There isn't a lockdown here at the moment. The government has been cautious about that because of the implications, because so much of the economy here is informal and people living day to day, and to turn around and say, well, you can't leave your home for a week or a month or whatever is putting considerable hardship onto people who can't afford to go and buy their groceries for a week or a month in advance. There's nobody traveling here at the moment. And I think there's about 3,000 Australians, at least, in Bali, but that's a mix of expatriates and tourists who have been stranded here. Bali has been talking about reopening at least some tourism in June, July, but that's pretty optimistic.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. Paul, can you give us a snapshot of what Thailand looks like these days?
Sure. Well, as you know, Rick, and like a lot of people here from Bangkok and from Thailand, so we don't have a full lockdown. It is a partial lockdown. So there is a curfew, 10 p.m. till I think 4 a.m. Besides that, all large malls, most shops are closed. Only essential shops, food shops, of course, and some pharmacies are open. Food deliveries can happen. Restaurants can open, but only for takeout or deliveries only. There has been a ban, of course, on alcohol that's been extended. It was originally till the 20th, from April 10th to the 20th, but it has been extended till the end of the month. That's for Bangkok. Each province is a bit different, so each governor will have their own directives on what will happen in that particular province. So it will change daily. I know like Phuket, closed its borders, so nobody was going in and out. And Phang Nga as well. Bangkok, it's still fine to travel in and out, but and there are some provinces that do sort of restrict travel. I think Phuket was actually even more a bit stronger, because even between sub-districts, they were trying to limit travel between sub-districts as well. But pretty much everyone's been working from home. Most everyone's been working from home. People still do go to work. Apologize for the noise of the baby, but overall, I mean, the cases are high. But over the last few days, we've seen the social distancing work. The curve has been flattening. I think today there's only less than 20 cases. Before that, you saw 100 cases per day, and then coming down to 50. So it's nice to see that it's now under 20 new cases per day. So hopefully we come back to normalcy soon. There has been talk from the government of easing some restrictions, but I guess they want to be careful because they've seen what's happened in other destinations who've eased restrictions and eased some of the policies, and then have seen spike in cases sort of, looking like Singapore or Hong Kong or even South Korea. So that's what it's like on the ground right now. But it's, people are abiding by the social distancing rules, wear masks. I guess you can't go out without wearing masks as well, or go on go on the BTS or any of the mass transits. So yeah.
Okay, thank you, Paul. And Stuart, I'm going to start off with you. I mean, stating the obvious, COVID has run rampant in terms of its destruction, in terms of the tourism industry and beyond that. But you've been in Southeast Asia for a while. I mean, you've been through the tsunami, you've been through financial crises, you've been through terrorist attacks in Bali. How is this different? How is COVID affecting your business and what you're doing? It's a lot of content creation. And I also know you're utilizing a paywall for a lot of your content. So as a content creator who's been here producing content for close to 2 decades, what's going on?
Well, first, I just want to correct something I said earlier where I said it was about 1,000 people dead here. The official figure is 647, although a lot of people think the death rate is far higher. So, but moving on from that, as far as my business is concerned, COVID has destroyed it. Like nobody is traveling. Our book, we're like a typical travel platform, so we make money through a variety of different sources like membership, affiliate bookings, that kind of thing. So for Agoda and Booking, which used to be major revenue sources to us, revenue's down like 95 to 99% year on year. So that's substantial. Traffic is down about 85%. Membership is down, well, very low. So like it's been a catastrophic event, like just within our business. Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, that's been the result for us. Very poor.
Okay, sorry to hear of those numbers, which are pretty stark. Bart, yeah. Let's go over to you for a moment. As you said, you're investing in travel startups here within the region. Give us your perspective. What's happening during the time of COVID, and how has that affected your investment strategy and working with these startups in the region?
Mm-hmm. So there are, well, the pros and cons. I mean, it's very simple that and clear to understand that for most startups, this is very harsh time. I mean, startups already in a normal life, their main focus is cash flow and make a long enough runway to survive and to find that right pivot, to grow and to ultimately scale into sustainable companies. So that's the normal way. At this moment, like Stuart is saying, also for all the travel-related startups, of course, there's no cash coming in, right? So some of them were lucky and they might have raised some capital right before everything shut down. So they have X months, most of the time 6 to 9 months left. And basically what they all, and this is what I'm also telling the portfolio and the startups that I talk to, is definitely refocus their current business plan that they have, right? Most of them were planning on sales, on marketing, increasing that, maybe even using 40 to 50% of their budget on sales. Well, it's about, there's no point. I mean, nobody's buying at the moment, right? So it's either reusing that budget and investing it in things that you predict that the market and the industry needs the moment that there is an uptake again, and that's basically on the startup side. That's one thing that I'm seeing or also advising. On the other side, from an investment perspective, there are, of course, it's for investors and venture capital, etc. And for us as well, we were raising new capital. We've postponed that larger fund size. We've postponed that to next year, but with the capital that we have, we can do more things. It's like Warren Buffett says, right? If others are greedy, be fearful. Well, today everybody's fearful. I'm looking at opportunities. There are a lot of opportunities where startups do not need necessarily $1 million to scale over the next 12 months, but might need $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 to get ready for that uptake. And it's in those, call them bridge rounds, that I'm looking at the moment to help startups to be ready when it all gets better. Because fundamentally, the good startups have not changed. It is an impact of an industry, but fundamentally, the startup that was good before and it was in a business of increasing revenues for hotels and airlines, etc. When the market will take up, I mean, maybe they can be even better positioned than before to increase revenues for instance, hotels.
And Bart, what are those companies that look attractive to you right now? So you said there's an opportunity when people are fearful. What is a good opportunity for someone in the VC community? Where would you be putting your money with a travel startup? What type of travel startup?
Well, I think one thing that the industry this time has learned, I mean, we've gone through a lot of crises and the travel has rebounded every time. Every time. There is a very clear line of around 4 to 7% sometimes of growth year over year. And sometimes you had SARS and there was a dip, in the financial crisis there was a dip, right? At that time the dip was much less than today, for the simple reason that it was always a bit local, right? This time it's totally global. It's minus 96%. There's zero revenue coming in. So the retake will not be V-shaped. It will be definitely U-shape. Okay, so that's what I believe. Now, what does the industry need to learn out of this is be more resilient when these things happen. I mean, really increased resilience. And resilience is about trying to lower maybe your fixed cost. Like hotels have a lot of fixed costs, airlines have a lot of fixed costs when these kind of things happen. So that's definitely something more in the back end of travel than in the front end of travel. So the online booking systems, the online booking tools, everything that's already solved for years, right? It's more in the back end that the fixed cost of technology, and technology can be a real good asset to drive down those costs much lower. So that's the things that I'm looking at first. And secondly, also about how to interact much more closer with your customers to increase your revenues, to potentially lower the commissions, etc., that players have to pay to the big OTAs, etc.
Okay, thanks, Bart. Paul, let's jump over to you, and I'm excited to have you on the Zoom here for two reasons. So the first one I want to touch on is PATA has some excellent conferences that they host around the world. And obviously this is not a great time to be hosting conferences. Obviously they're all canceled. What's this meant to PATA's business? And I guess what I'm getting at is PATA envisioning a different future going forward? Will conferences look the same in 12 or 18 months when, quote, things get back to normal? Or are you coming up with different concepts?
Well, I mean, from what I understand is that we're looking into, of course, well, first, I mean, as all our events have been, of course, canceled or postponed as of now, we are running a lot of virtual events, webinars. You have one next week on Thursday. We've held a series of webinars. I think, with the whole COVID thing, we probably had the first webinar on COVID in early January, so or early February. So, we were the first to pivot and do that. But we are looking to see how we can do more virtual events in the future. I think there is still a future for events, especially in Asia. Face-to-face is extremely important in Asia. It's about I would say respect, but it's also about trust, and you really gain that through a face-to-face meeting. There probably will be some idea of a hybridization of events, physical and virtual events. I don't know how that will look in the future, but we are exploring sort of the different avenues to hold virtual events as we go forward. But yeah, we still will of course have our physical events in the future once this hopefully comes back to normal. We do have a couple events scheduled this year, and we're hoping that things sort of come back to normalcy. But that will be difficult. I mean, when you look at the future of travel after, after COVID, that's the big $1 trillion question, right? That's, how does that look afterwards? So,
has Pata gained anything out? Meaning, the conference that you had 4 months ago, will that be the same look and feel of a conference that you're having 12 months from now? Or have you discussed like, okay, we're going to have a conference room, but every 2 seats are empty, or we're looking at some sort of health certificate, or, happy hours, everybody has to be 2 meters apart. Have you thought about?
Well, I mean, this thing is those policies are government policies, right? And those are more health issue policies. So, at the most important thing that everyone has to realize, this is first and foremost a public health issue, right? And we've been saying since the very beginning, in early February, late January, we've been saying that, look, you need to follow sort of the health professionals and their guidelines and their advice. And whatever, each country may be different. We're hoping there might be a standardization, but we will of course follow government suggestions for their destinations on some things some policies they might have. We will sometimes also guide them if they don't have. So we held an event in February, right? This is COVID. The crisis was just happening. We probably were one of the only ones that still held an event in February in Malaysia. It was a successful event. A lot of people still came, but we made sure that we had little things like hand sanitizers at every corner. We made sure that we talked with the host, and they made sure that it had temperature checks and hand sanitizer available when people walked in and out of the venue. So we gave face masks to people when they came in as part of their delegate bag. But we will look at the situation as it evolves. It changes daily, but we'll look at their local policies, look at maybe if there's World Health Organization policies, look at what their recommendations are, and then of course we'll look at some of the stuff that we've learned in over the past few months, and then take it from there and how we will decide how will events look like in the future. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thanks, Paul. Natalia, let's hear from Hoi An. So you are one of the co-founders of Secret Eats in Hoi An. And I'm wondering if there's a glimmer of hope, meaning I'm guessing traditionally your guests have been foreigners coming to Vietnam who sign up for your experiences, but you're saying at some level, Vietnam is opening up. So does that mean there might be a bridge opportunity to working with local Vietnamese or possibly the expat community? Or what are your plans for the near-term future?
So yes, as you mentioned, Vietnam is opening up, which can give us some hope. Though yes, our market are travelers, international travelers, not domestic market. But in the current situation, we are thinking what can be done. Though we are planning more of moving in different direction, we are thinking of moving our experiences online for now, because that's kind of a new trend. We don't know if it's what's going to happen from it, but why not to try? So now we are working on adjusting our existing experiences. Of course, it's not going to be the same, but if we start it now before everyone else starts, we have a bigger chance of getting a bigger audience. But speaking about domestic market, we'll consider it as well.
Okay, and curious, I believe your experience that you're offering is, high-end cocktails. So curious, how do you envision a virtual experience?
We'll have to simplify it, of course. We cannot offer recipes or workshops of complicated cocktails or anything way too expensive. So it would be simplified. But first of all, we plan to reach out to our customers that we had before, who follow us and support us, and we have a feeling they'll want to do something again with us. Let's see. We'll start experimenting and let's see how it works. But we want to stay afloat for sure.
And how will you distribute that product? Directly from your website or using some sort of OTA or Airbnb? What would be the process of distribution?
Well, basically using our website, our social media, and also using our database and email marketing, but plus also using OTAs and Airbnb experiences. So basically the same partners we had before, plus I'm considering actually cooperating with new OTAs.
Okay, great. And I'm going to pivot to Bart. This is a question from Vincent in the audience, and it sort of dovetails on what Natalia just said. But Bart, the question is, what's your view on offering product diversification to help with short-term cash flows for a business? And he gave the example, tour operators with virtual tours or experiences. So get out your crystal ball. You're talking to a lot of first movers in the travel industry. What's your thoughts on taking a horizontal step and diversifying?
Well, I think diversifying is really fine, but it doesn't happen overnight, unless when you deliver a solution for a problem that you were already doing. A food delivery, basically the problem you have is you want to eat, you want food, right? And now you just get that food there in a different way. So you solve the problem for the consumer. In the case of a tour, you are experiencing a tour in a certain way. You're seeing it, touching it, whatever. You go to Ayutthaya, etc. Right? Providing this through a virtual experience, A, is not the same. So it's not solving the same problem. But B, tour operators are not ready and do not have all of that technology available like on the spot. And of course, now you see a lot of startups coming in and trying to get that virtual tour in there. Basically, before it was mainly used for inspiration, and they're trying to do this. I think Greece has a great example where the Greece authorities of tourism have a great example where they're trying to inspire to keep Greece image alive. But it's not the same as a virtual tour. If you would compare it with a restaurant, basically you get the food delivered, but basically it would be a virtual food then. The same, yeah.
Okay, thanks, Bart. Stuart, I want to hear from you. So you shared with us some real tragic numbers in terms of, traffic down, affiliate sales down. So what does this time look like for you and other content creators? Is this all about cutting cost, or are you quote unquote investing in the future? Do you have a whole list of things that you've been planning on do the last 5 years to invest in the business that you now have time to do? What's your outlook? What's your plan?
Well, we were always a very slim operation. But coming back to what was just being said, when this all fell apart and people couldn't travel anymore, what I felt was this incredible level of frustration, because there's all these travelers who are stuck at home. They can't travel anymore. They're under quarantine, whatever. And then you've got all these local businesses that are going bankrupt because they don't have any business anymore. So we were sort of umming and ahhing about trying to figure out what to do about it, because you can't, it's not like you can drive a car to take, supplies after a tsunami or something like that, like the only thing you can do is stay at home. So that's when we decided to start Couchfish, which is a paid newsletter, and it traces a fantasy itinerary through Southeast Asia. So it's the Monday to Friday email, and each day it's like a different, today we're in Bangkok, tomorrow because the trip started in Bangkok, then Thonburi or Ayutthaya or whatever. So we're up to like day 18 or something like that. And when I started it, I was worried that there'd be all this pushback from people saying, well, what are you doing trying to encourage travel? And it's like, well, that's not what we're doing. What we're trying to do is take travel to the people who are stuck on the couch. That's why we call it Couchfish. And the feedback has been incredibly positive, and people saying, it's the one email they look at every day. They're so sick to freaking death of reading about COVID. And so they get, okay, here today we're in Sukhothai or whatever. So we've been doing that, and the response so far has been very encouraging. I don't know that I really want to ride it for 3 years, but we'll sort of see how things pan out. I mean, I was talking to a travel publisher last night, and we agreed that we think that travel like it was, say, in November last year, we're looking at 24 months before that is really back happening again, 18 to 24 months. So that's a long nap, you know. So it's a long nap for businesses in the trade, and it's a long nap for people at home who want to travel, and the businesses who are trying to like stay afloat. You know, we've always been a champion of family-owned, sustainable businesses, that kind of thing, and that's what we're trying to highlight through Couchfish. And so that's what we're doing now.
Okay, and if everybody does look at the chat comments, there is a fan on the Zoom webinar who is a follower of Couchfish and also enjoys your podcast. So everybody go to Travel Fish and support Stuart and the great work that he's been doing in creating content for over 15 years. And I'll also emphasize independent content. He doesn't do sponsored trips, etc. Paul, let's jump back to you. As I said, there's two reasons I wanted to speak to you today. One is you have a perspective in the region at creating great content through your conferences. But secondly, PATA is talking to everybody. PATA is talking to destinations all throughout Southeast Asia and beyond. What are you hearing from your daily conversations? Is it optimistic? Is it pessimistic? Is there hope? Is there fear? What are people saying, the decision makers that you speak with?
So, am I unmuted? Okay. Yeah, so from just sort of gathering everything that we've heard and talking to people, you know, things that we've been saying is that, look, it will be a delayed and progressive recovery. I think Bart had mentioned before that, you know, it's not going to be a V-shaped, a U-shaped. I think, I like to think what's Rafat at Skift had said, more like a slanted L shape. So it's a little bit slower. So it's still like there, but it's just, you know, it's a little bit slower. We just released our forecast today, our Asia Pacific forecast today. It's a 5-year forecast. It was done earlier in the year, but we were able to add some new information about that had to relate with the impact of COVID. So, you know, we're probably going to see the numbers return to normalcy in probably 2023. What is everybody? Sorry, here she is. Sorry, as my daughter come in. But
she's practicing social distancing in the mask. I'm proud.
But in terms of what is everyone thinking? Look, yes, there'll be a slow recovery. Things will take time. There will be more. Sort of the first thing will be domestic, right? I mean, because just between, like say Bangkok, just between the different provinces, that will open up first, and then of course you have maybe just regional will be the next step, then international. Countries will have to then maybe have bilateral agreements between them to make sure that they're both sides are doing health checks. When we look at how does travel look going forward, right? Will there be health checks at airports, both on departure and arrival? Will there be health questions on
Okay, it looks like Paul froze up, so hopefully he'll be coming back to us. And I'm going to go to the audience. We have a question from Bertie Lawson rather. He is in Yangon. He is the managing director of Sampan Travel there, as well as a chapter leader at Travel Massive. And this is a sensitive question to ask, but he's going, after this pandemic eventually passes and the economy begins to recover, will there be xenophobia in the region? In other words, you know, Thailand is known as the land of smiles and has been so welcoming for so many generations, but there's also an undercurrent of foreigners bringing the virus to the region. So I don't know who wants to take this question, but will the region be as welcoming as it's traditionally been, or will there be some leftover xenophobic feelings or fear of the foreigner? Stuart, you look pensive.
Oh, okay. I'll have a go. I mean, here in Bali, there is an element of this, and I think some of the press coverage hasn't done anybody any favors. Social media, it's like, okay, I mean, here, for example, the beaches are all closed for surfing, but foreigners, or well, people are still going down to snatch a wave. You just climb through the fence, you can go surfing. So all the photos that you see on social media are of foreigners doing this, but there's no shortage of Indonesians doing it as well. So when that kind of stuff is getting pushed out, and I mean, there's certain publishers like Coconuts, for example, has been really pushing this kind of thing, and they're feeding this fire that doesn't really exist at the moment. But the more you feed it, the more it grows. So I think there is that element of this is a foreign thing, but we're past that now. You know, in Indonesia, COVID isn't about, oh, I went and snogged an Italian surfer and then I got sick. You know, we're past that now. It's in the community. So publishers need to take a look at themselves and think about what messages they're pushing out.
Okay. Anybody else want to touch on that, or should we move on to the next question?
Well, maybe quickly. People tend to forget very quickly. So that's something that everybody should take in mind. I mean, remember all the terrorism attacks, and of course, we have all the security checks where you have to almost undress at an airport before you can enter. I think definitely health checks is something that will come more in place. On the xenophobia, I don't know, but I think you can't. I mean, COVID you can get from everybody, whether it's a foreigner or somebody else. So I see there is more distancing versus people in general. And of course, you will have right wing that will try to benefit from it and point fingers to foreigners, whoever the foreigners are. For Thailand, the foreigners might be all the non-Thais, but the Thai people will be foreigners somewhere else. So I think this is being misused to get some other gains out of it. But if you really think about it, I mean, you can get COVID from everybody. So just be careful in your contact at this moment, and people will forget at a certain moment, or at least will go about this differently.
Okay. Natalia, do you have something to add from Vietnam on that?
Yes. So yes, we did have a bit of xenophobia at the beginning of all this COVID situation, but now, at least in Hoi An, where I'm based, and most of the businesses, they depend on international tourists. They're looking forward to having tourists back again. So I don't think there'll be much of xenophobia. Maybe some certain districts that are not used to see tourists, but places that normally focus on tourists, they'll be happy to see everyone back.
Okay, and we're going to hear from Mary Ellen Ward in India, who wrote a question, and I'm going to give this one to Natalia, who is in the business of providing experiences to visitors. What do you think is going to come back first? What type of tour, what type of experience? Is it going to be nature? Is it going to be trekking or snorkeling or wellness travel? Do you have any sort of vision of what people are going to feel more comfortable with first?
That's a very good question, actually. We don't know for sure, but we can only guess. If people are spending a lot of time indoors, they'll probably want to be outside exploring. They probably would want to go to see the nature. Maybe we'll stay on the beach for a bit. So probably something, yes, involving nature and more of an active travel.
Okay. And okay, we're going to go back to Stuart. We have a question from your fan Ian, and he's asking, oh, okay, well, that's more of a comment. So I have another question from Philip Meyer. And your comment earlier, Stuart, was you're envisioning 18-24 months for the industry to bounce back. Is this, and his question is this estimate related to when you or the experts think the vaccine is finally available? If you want to comment on that 18 to 24 month answer or statement.
Well, I'm no expert, but we're a big fan of a supporter of responsible travel. And I think that until you're able to prove that you're not a risk to the community that you're traveling to, then that's the epitome of irresponsible travel. So there needs to be, whether it's a vaccine or some kind of treatment or like tests before you get on a plane. Like I come back to the yellow fever certificate for Africa, and I envisage some kind of situation like that where if you can't prove that you're not a risk to where you're going, you can't get on the plane. So if you work on that assumption, then you're looking at, man, I don't know how long it will take to make a vaccine. Let's like say a year. And then it will take the UN another 6 months to decide what color the certificate should be, you know. And then you've got to wait for the vaccination to be, you know, out across the region. I mean, that's a colossal amount of time. And that's just from the inbound point of view. If you look at it from the destination's point of view, when you've got a hotel that has been closed for a year or even just 6 months, all the staff have gone. They've all gone back home. I mean, Bali's expensive to live in. So if you don't have a job, you're going to go back to Java or Sumatra or whatever. So these places are going to have to reacquire staff. They're going to have to hose out the rooms, clean up the joint, all of that kind of stuff. And that doesn't happen overnight. You've got to wait for borders to reopen, visas, like the whole thing. It's going to be a long time. And until this stuff is nutted out and people know how much of a risk it is to go there or for me to go into the place, I can't see independent travel restarting. I think we'll see the lead will be business travelers who have the money to sort things out. And then it will be independent budget travelers who are generally the first ones who are less risk averse. And for like group travel, I mean, add another year.
Okay, some telling estimates there. Bart, I'm hoping you can pull out your crystal ball and your wizard hat. I know you're speaking to a lot of forward thinkers, and we personally spoke the other day about a situation where Emirates is rolling out COVID tests on some of their flights or one of their flights for passengers who are boarding the airplane. What are you envisioning? What technologies or ideas or thoughts are you hearing people contemplating to make travel go back to quote unquote normal so that we can have the flexibility and freedom as we used to?
Well, I'll go to the crystal ball in a second. I would like to add something what Stuart's saying on 18, 24 months, etc. Even if there is a vaccine of COVID, the industry needs to think about the next thing. This is not a one thing that just happens now. This will happen again. Certain kind of these diseases are there and they will come again. So yes, maybe we have a vaccine and then the world goes open again after 24 months, but you will still have healthy people that are not COVID, but maybe are having different diseases. So going to the crystal ball, we need to find a way where indeed there is some kind of a health passport. Because I think the threat, and that has now been shown, I think, the threat of such a pandemic is like even much, much greater than terrorism. And if you look at all the money that has been spent on security, well, I think there should be much, much more money spent on this. And then looking at what type of things. First of all, it's very funny that when you go to immigration, and Thailand is definitely an example on that. You have to stay inside. There is a curfew, but up to, I think, a month ago, people still had to go to immigration to have their 90 days reporting. And when you come there, you have to put your finger on a fingerprint where everybody touched that the whole day. So fingerprint technology is like not done anymore. You need to go to iris scanning, so touchless scanning mechanisms. That's one. Health passports, where, for instance, you will do a test like what Emirates is doing now. Maybe that's a bit, I mean, I thought it was blood testing even. There are tests at this moment, and I think that can give you an answer in 15 minutes. And I saw that now in the US even there is, it's in fact a test that came from Singapore that has now opened in the US and got all the news yesterday, I think, about tests that can give you an answer within 15 to 20 minutes. Now, I remember a lot of times that I was waiting at immigration just to pass the border with a passport. That would take much longer than 15 minutes. So why, if we have those tests available, maybe we should have them at airports. Now, don't forget that, that's the last part I want to say this about the rebound of travel. Definitely cross-border travel, that's going to be the difficult point. But there is a lot of domestic travel in Asia, all right? And domestic travel is at this moment, the moment that hotels will be able to open up again, I mean, domestic travel is the first that will rebound, definitely. People want to get out. I know for sure, Rick, you want to go back traveling. Well, there is a lot to see in Thailand. So this time you can't see your 190 whatever country, but you will definitely go somewhere in Thailand. And this is what will be rebounding first.
Okay, great. Thank you for that perspective, Bart. We're going to hear from Alexandra. I believe she's in France. Paul, are you here?
I'm back.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
No worries. Welcome back, Paul. And again, you're talking to a lot of people in the industry and the ministries of tourism, et cetera, in the area. And the question is from Alexandra. In essence, do you think the prices of future plane tickets can be competitive and attractive? So she's talking, long haul flights from Europe to the region. So, I mean, we've heard the speculation that the middle seat is going to be open going forward. Obviously, there's been so much competition in the airline industry the last several years, and so many discount airlines making so much flexibility in terms of mobility for people to get around the world. Are you hearing anything in terms of what the world is going to be like in aviation going forward in terms of pricing or options? And it looks like Paul is frozen. We're going to have to set up a GoFundMe to get him a better internet connection. So hopefully the other three of you heard that question. Stuart, Bart, Natalia, do either three of you want to touch on what you envision? I mean, is there going to be good, easy, cheap Norwegian air options anymore from Europe to Southeast Asia? And it looks like Bart rang the bell first. Bart, what are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I think the airlines will be eager to get as many of the initial early adopters, let's call them, travelers back. So there will be some great deals coming to start flying again, to get over that first fear. Now, on a sustainable level, suppose there will be some kind of new ruling that you can't sit that close together anymore in an airplane economy. Sometimes people are sitting almost on my lap. I mean, that is the big change that I see happening on an airline perspective. It was all about putting so many people in an airline as much as possible. Well, definitely on a corporate level, people might say like, hey, why do I need to travel? Why do I have to go through all that burden and sit 6 hours or 5 hours in an economy seat if I can do this on Zoom? So airlines will have to be more attractive, maybe go back, not entirely back to the 60s where it was luxury, but definitely, I mean, it's high time that certain airlines start providing service again, that the journey of travel is also something, or that it's also pleasant. Because let's be honest, I mean, the flying is not always the most fun part of the travel.
No, I agree with that for someone who spends a lot of time in economy. And Stuart, this is a question from Vincent again, Vincent Sim. And his question is, in essence, he's speaking about sustainable tourism. So, Stuart, what's your view on reimagining sustainable tourism post-pandemic? Do you have any plans around this topic for your business, if any?
Well, I think at least in the early days, when travel, whenever this is that it starts to open up again, you're going to be having to quarantine when you arrive. Like at the moment, if you fly into Bangkok, I think you're quarantined for 2 weeks or something like that. And on one hand, that's a complete pain in the ass. I mean, who wants to spend two weeks in a hotel near the airport? But on the other hand, to my point of thinking, sustainable tourism is slow tourism. So there is an opportunity in this shit sandwich to sort of say, well, how can we take advantage of this? So, for example, I was tweeting about this the other day, but sort of saying you could go down to Prapadang and run like writer workshops or food things or cultural immersion or language classes, like lots of things where you don't have to be traveling to a different destination each day. And if that's wedded into local community sustainable projects, I mean, that is a good idea. I mean, for a lot of people who come to Thailand for the first time, I mean, the idea, like, I mean, it would take me 2 weeks to learn how to slice a pineapple the way a Thai can do it. And I don't know that I want to spend 2 weeks doing it. But I mean, there's a lot of scope for that kind of thing. And it's like, slow down, smell the coffee, get out of hotels, stay in homestays, all of that kind of thing. And I think there's a lot of opportunity, I guess. Like, it feels dirty to sort of say that given everything that's going on, but I think there is opportunity there. Just getting people to slow down.
Okay, and this is sort of a big picture question. This is Angie from Mexico, and her question is, and I'm not sure if it really is going to be the travel industry, but she's asking, how's the travel industry going to take care about tourism once it's back open to avoid COVID again? So what role will tourism industry have in preventing another COVID type health situation? Any thoughts, Paul? I don't know if you can chime in or any thoughts on that.
I'm back. Sorry, it keeps crashing. I don't know what happens with that. Well, how does I think what I've heard before. I mean, you know, Bart and Stuart had mentioned before how it will look going forward in terms of there will be health checks, right? I mean, there will be some kind of certification. There will be more precautions going forward for the industry, right? So, like I said, you know, the Emirates thing is a blood test, right? Where you can do a blood test for your board, 10 minutes, you get your test back. I mean, blood tests are a bit too intrusive. That wouldn't, you know, I don't think most people would be willing to have somebody at the airport give you a blood test. I mean, you know, some countries you probably would just say, yeah, that's not happening. But yeah, there will be more precautions. I think the travel behavior will also change in that regard too. I mean, you'll look at something, you know, sustainability is a big issue, but then also people will also focus on hygiene and safety and look at, you know, where they're eating, you know, where they're going, is it clean? Will there be some standards for hotels and tour operators going forward? There's different organizations that have been talking about that, having standards. And then, so if a traveler goes somewhere, they see that, okay, this thing is following a certain standard, a government approved hygiene standard in their hotel, in their tours, in their attractions, whatever. So that will hopefully then prevent, you know, future pandemics. These are things that are on people's minds now, and it will, of course, be something going forward to prevent future pandemics as you know, as we look forward to the future.
Okay, thanks, Paul. This is from Ian. That is Stuart's fan of both Travelfish and Couchfish. And Ian is asking Stuart, is there going to be any changes? What is going to be happening to your guide post-pandemic? Are there going to be updates, changes to your destinations, a different way that you're presenting information and data? Stuart, I think you might be on mute.
No.
Okay, Stuart, unfortunately, we can't hear you. So I don't know if you want to type out an answer to Ian, if you look in the chat room. I'm going to encourage everybody to pop in your question within the Zoom group chat if you have any thoughts, and we'll be wrapping up soon. And Stuart, unfortunately, he can't chime in, but Stuart just pointed to a silver lining. So in other words, sustainable travel, slow travel, and this might be one of the changes or benefits that happens because of COVID. And I want each one of you, Paul, Bart, Natalia, is there a silver lining that we can look to within the tourism industry that will come from the COVID? So again, whether that number is 12 or 18 or 24 months, when quote, travel gets back to business, is there something to look forward to? Is there a silver lining?
Well,
Yeah.
I think speaking as a small tour operator, well, probably there will be better quality of products, better service. Safety procedures will be in place, and also companies that will survive, they'll be looking forward to having new customers. They'll be loving them for sure.
Okay, thank you, Natalia. Bart, what do we have to look forward to? Like, let's leave on a more optimistic note.
Yeah, well, the silver lining I've been already looking out for, like pre-COVID, is not having those endless lines in airports or anywhere you're traveling. Check-in, then immigration, then at the boarding gates, etc., etc. So maybe finding a where you actually can go much quicker through the airports, don't have too many people standing together, etc. So finding technology solutions that enable that, that's, let's say, my silver lining.
But